single day, I'm gonna make something great. That's my way. Every single day, I'm gonna make something great. That's my way.
Good evening to everyone. I hope everyone is doing well. I hope everyone is doing fresh. My name is Sky, and welcome to the Impact Show. Thank you very much for joining us wherever you are. You're streaming live both on my Facebook and YouTube. I just want to apologize on the Facebook link. It just changed for a second ago. I don't know what happened. I think the link got deleted. But however, it's still on. We are live and we're back. And today, as we were talking about today we're going to talk about mental health. As we talked about mental health yesterday, and we have our guest Nakala, and also we still have Maxine in the building, which we are going to talk about mental health. And before we're going to start, we're going to summarize of basically of what we talked about yesterday, and getting into today's topic. And I always tell people that if you have a question, if you have a comment, feel free to drop it down on the comments and we'll definitely answer the questions. So let me welcome our guests and let's get started. Good day, good day. Today I'm having Maxine and Nicolo. I hope they are good. But before we start, I just want to introduce them to you. Oh, they'll introduce themselves. We're going to start with Maxine, then we're going to go to Nicolo. Maxine.
Hi everyone. As I said yesterday, my name is Maxine Klovu. I'm a final year occupational therapy student, and basically my profession deals with people with disabilities, mainly physical and mental disabilities, and it's just all about helping people to be as independent as they can in every area of their life. And yeah, that's basically a summary of me and what I do.
And Nicolo, yes.
Hi everyone. I'm Nakolo Tamini and I'm a psychology student. Basically, psychology deals with the science and study of the mind and human behavior. Yep.
Wonderful, 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 wonderful. Before we get in today's show, before we start with what Notolo has for us, we are going to give Maxine just some few seconds. I didn't say minutes, I said seconds. Just for her to summarize just to give us a summary of what we are talking about, because this thing is a continuation of yesterday. So Maxine, the floor is yours, man.
Okay, so yesterday, basically, what we spent most of our time, if not all of our time, talking about was anxiety disorders. And so we basically said that there's 6 main categories of anxiety disorders, which include phobias, panic disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder. We said also post-traumatic stress disorder rather, and then acute stress disorder last. And so we said that all of these disorders have their own specific signs and symptoms, but the symptoms that make them that join them basically are the similar symptoms that they have, which include irrational and excessive fear. It also includes apprehensive feelings and tense feelings, as well as difficulty managing daily tasks or distress-related feelings when you think of these tasks.
Interesting, interesting. And yesterday we answered a lot of questions, and some people had questions, and I loved it when people ask questions. And there's some people who watched the party, because for those who missed it, I did on the Facebook page, I did the review. I repeated it again so that those who missed it could see it out, and people were very impressed, and they grabbed some information, and I believe that they will use it to their advantage. So without wasting any time, let's give Notolo her opportunity to us about mental health. Take it away.
All right. So, with regards to mental health, we have stress, right? And stress is one of the topics that usually people take for granted, because they're like,
Mm.
I'm stress. And it's just like stress. And we don't focus on the impact that stress has on us. So I first like to define what is stress, because people they think stress is one of those words that don't have any definition. Like pertain stress. So it mean nice stress, just stress. So stress is an emotional response to circumstances and events that threaten us and challenge our coping abilities, right? So some degree of stress is normal, but too much of it can be detrimental to one's performance. And a prolonged
Mm.
stress has been also indicated as a significant factor in our illness. Hence, my focal point to stress today will be the relationship between stress and health. So, so it means that stress is it doesn't mean that stress is the direct cause of a disease, right? But it certainly acts as a catalyst for the disease. So in other words, it means that the disease starts and then it develops in the presence of stress, right? So which happens that the culprit seem to have lent us an a prolonged periods of stress. We call it that is a chronic stress, ne? They experience what sorry, my bad. The culprit seems to lentuzana to be prolonged periods of stress, or so-called called chronic stress, rather than intense stress experienced over a short period of time. So people who experience stress over a period of 2 years, or before being exposed to a common cold virus, are more 3 times likely to catch a cold than those who reported no stress. So you see how
Mm.
stress has a huge impact on our health. So and also
Mm.
so and also our when we have ilentuzana, a chronic or repeated stress over a period of time, it can be very harmful to our physical health, and it may lead to a development of a psychometric disease. So a psychometric disease will just uh, spread those two words. So a psycho it's the mind, and a psychometric, so soma it's body. So that it's a condition where our psychological factors contribute to the physical damage in the body, which can be harmful in the functions in the functions of our body. And then when you move also to the process lentuzana, stress, ne? We also find that there's a module, ne, of stress that consists of 5 phases. So these phases, really, they cannot be seen as independent steps because they occur one after the other. So the module is based on the theory of the perception that describes the process whereby the perceptual content changes into meaningful ideas in terms of information processing loops. Yabo? So these phases that we have, phase number one, we have encountering potential stresses. I'll go through you right now. And then the second phase, we also have performing a primary appraisal. And the third phase, we have experiencing stress. And then the fourth phase, we have performing a secondary appraisal. And then the last phase, because it's a 5 phases, those are the only 5 phases we have, is apply coping design strategies. So under phase one, encountering potential stressors, ne? We know that in the world that we live in, they consist of various events, no? So these events are potential stressors when they are first encountered. So So these potential stresses, we can branch them out into three. So we have the universal events, and we also have the personal events, and the last one, we also have micro events. So under universal events, these, like, they affect the majority of people in the society or around the world, like just like right now, corona, right? It's something that we can put under universal events, under encountering potential stresses, because we are experiencing it as as global. And then the second one, we have personal events. They are specific to a community or individual. So this is the kind of stress that is being faced by a certain community or an individual. And then the micro events, they affect an individual on daily basis. So it's more or less as the second one, but the change here is what the individual is experiencing this kind of stress on their everyday basis. So the examples rather of the universal events under lenses and stressors are like natural disasters, terrorist attacks, and occurrence of an epidemic disease, like I've just said, and maybe and up and downs of swings of the world economy. And then example also of the personal events, stressors, the ones that affect a community or rather an individual, is like finding a job or getting married, being involved in a motor car accident, or getting a new or getting a new shopping mall in the neighborhood. Those are the kind of lentuzana personal events, stresses. And then under the last one there is the one I've said, the micro event stresses. So the example of micro event stresses are like organizing someone to pick up umntwana from esikolweni. That's the kind of stress. Or shopping for the right pair of shoes. That's also the kind of stress. I think it's issue that it deals with daily, into an everyday basis. Or even the repairing of the leak in the roof, or paying the electricity bill. So in our daily lives, the events from these categories become connected one way or the other. We may not feel directly involved in a natural disaster like the universal ones, like I've said, or act of a terrorism that happens on the other side of the world. But the effects of these events, they change our moods, right? And they make us feel negative in general. For instance, um, Black Lives Matter. Okay, not we had the apartheid ngapha, but it's even an impact manje mayiqala ngale US, right? It's also stressed us as much as singekho ngale US, but we kind of like felt stressed about it, right? So that's what it was saying here. And then as we form associations with these events, they become a physio they become lentuzana psychosocially connected. So due to these connections between these events, we may later experience a particular event as a stressor, and not only because that event is stressful in itself, but because we perceive the event against the background of another as a stressful event. So I don't know if Lisa Funuk Faga any contributions or what, or should I carry on?
I think the one thing that I'd also like to just hop in and say, Wuti, it's
Yes,
Jongoba, you were giving the statistics, Wuti, somebody who is experiencing chronic stress is more likely to get sick
yes,
than someone who is not. It's then important to note, Wuti, stress really affects our immune systems because that's the only thing that's keeping us healthy, especially during this time, during this pandemic. Stress is really something that lowers our immune system and leaves us more open to getting sicknesses and diseases.
so true. I like that. Very true. And hence, Niti, it's very crucial that you take stress as something serious, and don't ignore in that by stress, so the other phase,
Mm.
the other one that I included was the second phase, which is performing a primary appraisal. Okay, so here when the event is occurred, when an event is encountered, rather, we immediately experience the event as positive, negative, neutral, or ambiguous. It depends. Eh? So the result of a primary appraisal of the event. Yeah, so the feeling we experience is the result of our psychobiology. For example, whether we are feeling the tense, and the circumstance in which we find ourselves. So, for example, someone might be praised for their courage to sit for a challenging examination, rather, and the way in which that person perceives the praise depends on the psychosocial circumstances of the praise event. So, let's say, if the praise is offered by someone who they know and they really understand the challenge involved, they may perceive the praise as positive light because it's someone that they know and they understand towards this challenge that they're facing. But if the praise comes from someone who does not have a fairnest idea of the complexity of the examination, they dismiss the praise. It's like now they feel neutral about it, you know, you know, and they feel neutral about it, or may even feel angry at the person's authenticity, feeling negative about the event of praise because now they're assuming that this person I can understand the stress enginaso. So it's easier like to relate with if it's someone which has a capacity, yeah, this thing rather than someone ongana a total idea or a clue about what they're going through. So the threatening and lentuzana, the threatening and harmful events evoke lentuzana negative feelings, but an event that is challenging is more likely to evoke um, positive feelings. However, however or not, we are likely to see an event as a challenge. As challenging depends on our personalities. So, in case of a community's reaction to an event, cultural rules and prevailing emotive perceptions of the community play a significant role. So, an event that cannot be accommodated within a cultural ethos of a community is more likely to be experienced negatively than an event that fits the cultural rules and norms, like what I've said. So, however, in general, negative feeling exists. In general, the negative feeling exists in a community. The community is likely to experience demanding events as negative rather than to see them in a neutral or a positive light. And then when we move, everything, but so when we move to our lentusana, our third phase, which is now experiencing stress. So stress is a feeling that is associated with heightened psychological arousal. So in we feel physically and emotional tense when we are experiencing stress, which is a general feeling of pressure. So when we're experiencing stress, it doesn't deal nenentuzana with the sphere of emotions pela, but it also deal with a physical sphere. So hence it says it's a general feeling of pressure now. So if an event, let's say for example, if an event acquired a negative feeling, you know, we associate the event with harm or a threat. But if it is with a positive feeling, we associate it with a challenge and opportunities that can be utilized to 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 our our advantage. So a mixture of positive and feeling and feel and a nature of positive and negative feelings tends to events being experienced as both threatening and challenging. So what we find here, in most cases, negative feelings we find them as threatening when you're experiencing stress, right? And then with positive lentuzana, positive feelings, or rather when you're feeling stress but in a positive way, we associate it with something where we find it challenging, and hence they start to go right now, and then it's like something where we find them opportunities. And then, yeah, the phase four now. Phase four, it says performing a secondary. Oh, okay, this one it's it's a bit lengthy. It's a bit lengthy, but I think it's more or less of the same as phase two. Because the first one was performing a primary appraisal, and now the fourth one is a secondary appraisal. But engithanda ukuthi siyibukisise kakhulu is the fifth phase, which is applying coping strategies. So how do we deal with stress, and what types of strategies do we bring to the table when we experience stress? So there are three kinds like three kinds of strategies to cope with stress, right? So there are problem solving strategies, avoidance strategies, and social support strategies. So people who use problem solving strategies accept responsibility and think things through. So they deal with matters and they adapt their behavior in rational ways. And then, so they deal with matters and they adapt their behavior, in rational ways. So this approach to coping with stress stands in a stark contrast to people who handle stress by applying avoidance tactics. So these individuals do not take personal responsibilities, but try to find excuse for their lack of coping by blaming external factors. They do not react rationally, but rather emotionally based arguments in attempts to lower their experience of stress. And then that was avoidance. And then the third approach to coping with stress is to master a social support. So social support can be tangled in a form of a physical assistance. It can also be intangible in the form of advice, recommending actions and plans to help the person under the stress to cope more effectively, or encouragement, providing emotional support. So people who have emotional support are better equipped to handle stressful situations. So those are the three coping methods and strategies that we have for stress, which I'll say again right now. Uguti, it's problem solving strategies, avoidance strategies, and my um third one was sorry a social support strategy, which seems to be the one which is most effective from the other two. So yeah, that's all me stress.
I just wanted to um, get us to maybe make the link between anxiety and avoidance coping mechanisms. So I think that there's a big link between people who are experiencing anxiety disorders and avoidance coping techniques, because basically what's happening there is those people are not equipped at that time with the emotional, let me say, capabilities or emotional skills to deal with the stress that they're experiencing at that time. And so then they resort to avoidance mechanisms because they don't know how else to basically cope at the time. And it's like Okolia said, Uguti, the social support coping mechanism is the best one because you're receiving emotional support from people. And anxiety, is something that directly affects your emotions. So you don't have that emotional intelligence, that emotional skill that you need to be able to cope appropriately with the stress that you're experiencing.
Thank you actually for making the link between the two. Actually, that is correct. Yes.
Oh, that's very much powerful. Before we continue, I don't know. Should we answer some questions? Because I see some questions here, so I don't know that if it's
Def-
okay. Maybe we can answer some questions. And yeah, here's the first question that comes.
okay. Do you want to take that or can I answer?
Oh, you can answer. Wait. Okay, you can answer.
Okay, so definitely, it's I don't know if you remember yesterday when we were talking about the different causes for anxiety. Some of the things are just hereditary, so you inherit them, for lack of a better word, from people in your family with mental health illnesses. So not necessarily to say that if someone in your family has mental health problems, then you're definitely going to have them. But the likelihood of you having them increases when there's a history of mental health illness in your family.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay, okay. Then here we have a second question from Usi. Yeah.
Okay. Cody, do you want to answer that?
So that we can, when we move on,
Okay.
then yeah.
All right. So, okay, Seba was asking if it's possible that we kind of mistakenly diagnose anxiety with stress or vice versa.
Mm,
So I definitely think that as people, we
mhm,
can accidentally misdiagnose ourselves or
mhm,
suspect that we have anxiety when you have stress or vice versa. But
mm,
like I was saying yesterday, we'll see there's a document that they deal with as medical health professionals to be like, okay, these are the categories that this person must fill in order
yes,
for them to, rather to be
yes, yeah.
diagnosed with this thing.
Mm,
So the likelihood of them making a mistake is way lower than the likelihood of us making a mistake. Although if
mm.
you are thinking about yourself and being like, do I have anxiety or do I have stress? I think it's very possible to
Mm.
misdiagnose yourself just because you don't have all the factors that you need to make these diagnoses.
Okay, that's very much powerful. That's very much possible. So I don't know if we still have something before we can continue, or you have something to say, or in a comment, or in continuation to what we were talking about, because it's very much important that I personally believe that we as people, with the information that I'm receiving now, like I'm just amazed because some of the things I doubted or some of the things I didn't know, but due to the information that is shared, I am now informed and I am now aware of things that just small things, about stress. Because personally speaking,
Mm,
we deal with stress every day of our life. It may be something small, it
true.
may be something big, but to me personally, it's something. I don't know. If my question is that, how can we deal with a stress which you cannot control? I always have this question because sometimes we worry about things that we cannot control. For example, if I just want to make an example so that we all understand, because now we tend
Mm-hmm.
to have stress on something which we know that, okay, it's out of our hands, unlike something that that we can control. So I don't know if someone can answer me with that, is it possible that somebody can move away, or rather find a way to deal with, or rather let go of things that really, that, okay, in this situation I cannot control it, or it's not in my, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
so for me
yeah.
personally, hmm
No, you can go on. But oh,
uh,
wow, wow, good question. It is, but now corner.
mm,
Sometimes it's something that you cannot control. You have to accept it is something that you cannot control. Now, corner, hence
mm,
I was to ask
mm,
what do you mean? What is something that you cannot control? Because you can find that something when that you
mm,
cannot
mm.
control, you actually contribute. You can control it. Someone can control it, or it
uh,
is then never to control you. So I think it depends, Uguti. If maybe can give a specific example so that what are we targeting on. But yeah, I believe
for example, okay,
just
okay, let me make an example, and just for us to understand. Let's say,
okay.
for example, uh, I've written an exam. Okay, I've written an exam and I submit my paper to the examiner. I'm
Okay.
worried about the results, but I know that it's out of my
Uh,
hands. I still have that worry. You understand? Yes, that kind of
mm,
example. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm,
Did
mm,
you study enough?
mm.
Did you study enough for the exam?
No,
Did you
let's say
study enough?
I'm just, yeah, let's say I
Okay.
am prepared. I studied enough because let's say this.
Okay.
Okay, there's this thing of saying that when you exit an exam room, you have that thing. Okay, guys, this question four,
Yeah.
but you wrote it an opposite to what was written. So now you just develop that behave that in your mind, like oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no. So I don't know because that's what we are facing now. I can if,
mm,
sometimes that's what you. For example, I can lose my phone. I'm worried now about how am I gonna like it's something that you didn't control. You didn't have the control
Even
over
con-
you. Yes.
mm. And so I think that this is where we also make that link between stress and normal anxiety. So remember yesterday we were
Mm,
talking about how
mm,
there's anxiety disorders, and then
mm,
there's a certain level of normal anxiety. And so for me, that example where you've written that exam, but you can't help but like worry a bit about,
mm,
how the results going to be.
it's
For me,
me.
that'll be an example of normal anxiety, because
mm.
it's just one of those things. You're not going to kill yourself worrying about it, but you're still going to have that
True.
worry to be like, yo, what happened to me in that exam? So it's
Uh,
True.
definitely, yeah. And also I wanted to it was a comment that I just, made a mental note of and I forgot to say, Wuti.
mm,
There's isn't there stress, but there's two types of stress as well. There's distress and there's eustress.
Oh yeah.
So
mm,
distress is that stress that's bad. That's the stress that we don't want. But eustress is
mm,
the stress that Claude was talking about, the one that is positive in that it brings about positive changes, or it
mm,
provides us with
Feel like it's
challenges.
challenging just.
Exactly. And also
mm,
the degree to which you perceive that stress then as something positive, that's bringing, like,
Like,
challenges that'll teach new skills, or something negative which is being detrimental to your health, is largely dependent on the type of personality that you have. So if I'm a person who is a generally negative nje, yonke into yami, when I think of it, I'm like, Zafa, there's
mm.
it's more likely that anytime I encounter stress, it's going to be a negative type of stress for me, just because that's the
true.
type of person that I am.
So guys, I
Okay.
always keep a positive mind. Kasi. Try it by
Mm,
all means. Just keep a positive mind. Feed it
okay.
with
Mm,
a lot of positivity.
Yeah.
No matter
mm,
how hard it
Okay.
is,
Mm,
but
definitely.
make sure to have that era
mm,
of positivity. Yes.
mm. Okay. Just a quick question. Now, I know I'm asking too many questions today, but I have a question
Go
whereby
ahead.
if yes, man, if for example I am living with somebody who maybe let's say because sometimes you, as Maxine said yesterday, that you cannot diagnose somebody or you cannot say this person per se 1, 2, 3. But let's
Mm,
say I because due to the information that was shared, due to the information that was shared and everything, and I think that an individual or myself, let's work with an individual right now. If an individual
Okay.
you see with it is suffering from such things, I want us to talk about the approach. How do you approach? Because sometimes we have the wrong approach. Like for example,
Yeah.
mm,
we say the
Mhm.
wrong things as individuals. So that's why umuntu nje aba atai, I'm not going to get help. I'm not going to be, we have like whatever you're saying is countering it because it's the approach that we are taking. So my question is that how do we approach this certain thing? For example, if we see somebody in the community or somebody in your workplace, it can happen anyway because also in workplaces you find people having such problems. So
They have
the
it.
question,
mm.
so the question that I have is that how can we approach it in a proper way that that person sees that you care and also promoting that that person must get help. I don't know who can answer me, one of you or both. We can take turns. We can take turns. Just yeah, I
um,
don't know.
okay. So for
Mm,
me, with mental health is something that's it's a sensitive topic, especially because of the stigma,
mm,
and stereotypes that is associated with having mental health problems.
mm,
So in those instances, people in the community, I always think that it's better to not refer them specifically, but to get people involved who deal with those type of things. So your area social worker or your psychologist in that area, I think the best approach for me personally would be to go to them and be like, listen, I think that I am seeing someone who's having mental health problems, and then you can go together with that person to approach the individual to be like, this is what I've been noticing, and this is, what I think can help. But before you do that, I think it's always best to go to the person and just check who sees everything okay. Is there anything going on that you want to share with me? I've been noticing this and this and this about you, and I'm really worried about your mental health and wellness. And if you feel like that person is really going through a lot or really having some serious mental health problems, and they're unable to basically realize, and they're in denial, then I think that's when you can go then to your area social worker or your area psychologist to be like, this is what I'm experiencing and I don't know how to deal with it, because they have a lot of experience with those type of things, and they are really well versed to deal with people in the community who are having these problems.
Okay.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
Yes.
So Srinama, I was about to say Velaguti, rather than if you're scared of approaching that certain individual, you rather go to the specialized person and tell them, make them know of Uguti, there's a certain person Vele who's going through this and they need uncedo 1, 2, 3. So how can we approach and tackle this issue?
Oh, okay. Like I'm throwing questions which I've seen and which I've thought. And I'm taking down notes. That's why I'm busy looking down. So that's very much important when you said, at least when you have somebody who can accompany you, and things like that, because even that person can even ask you, okay, why do you say so? Why do you think this person? And you can share about things that you saw, things that she talks about or he talks about, whatever the case may be. So now moving along to this pandemic, we know that this pandemic has caused us a lot of trouble. When I was doing some research, the mental illnesses like just rose and up, like they just went up, and to a point whereby people, and then to a point whereby I was reading about in Brazil, whereby people killing themselves right now and everything because they don't know what's happening around the world. Everything is just a mess, and also social media. And I was looking at everything else that was happening. So now the question that I have is that how do we now attend mental health in adults? Because we have, I know, I mean, I always look at it in young people, but there are adults who are affected by this, and they try to bottle it up, and also men. When we talk about men, because us as men, generally we don't talk about things. We just like, yeah, it's love. We act strong, but inside we are burning. Inside we are being just, we understand it better because it takes time for a man, like a lady can talk, okay, fine. Yes, it's easier, but for us as men, Kalapat, yo, it becomes, you just go north, then south, then you come back. So now, how do we deal with mental illnesses, or how do we attack it? For example, if I'm a young person who sees an older person, maybe somebody 60s, 50s, who's affected by this, how can I now, as an individual, attack it? Or do I still use that same approach as I was using to? Yeah, I just want to know that one. When it comes to adults. Yeah.
Adults. I feel like we can use the same approach the one Maxine and we illustrate right now. This person is an adult, and if we approach her sometimes as they know everything on us, so so rather land a specialized person, and then you tell them with a certain adult to use the same approach, then you need too. And men, please, towards men, please normalize, voice out whatever you're feeling, voice it out, because bottling up things it's gonna lead that to nabona khona manje besekulate and gender-based violence, and that's only because abafuna voice out. So feel free, voicing out doesn't make you weak, it doesn't make anyone weak, it helps you. So as men, please, whoever who is listening to this, normalize voicing out your feelings. It
Definitely,
make you
definitely.
weak. Trust me, it doesn't make you weak. Yes.
And I really think, John, that you touched on such a heavy and a very big topic, especially in looking at men's mental health. Because the fact of the matter is that in society, we've basically taught our children, our male children, that expressing their feelings is
That's true.
wrong. And that's why we have so many grown men and, boys who are angry because they've never learned any healthy ways to express the feelings that they're experiencing. But again, that is a massive topic. And if we start in
It's gonna
because it's a lot to unpack. But I really, no, really, it's a lot to unpack because it's the reason for most of the angry men that we have in our community. But like Okoli has said, I think that in those instances where you have adult males or abantu abadala, like the elderly, who are having mental health issues, and you can see with man, this thing is really getting out of hand, or just that it's not healthy. You can go again to your area social workers. I guarantee you, they have somebody who is closer to those people's age, maybe, who can basically come out with you to approach Lomdom Dala, talk to them, because it's a very important point that you raised, because it's hard for us as young people to relate or even try to tell abantu abadala stuff, because it's a very weird dynamic. It's not something as cool as you can go to Ugogo and be like, how this is what's going on with your mental health. Exactly.
Yeah, that's very much true. And I once saw about men. I once saw an ad. I'm just saying this, which I saw. I once saw an ad whereby they had an elephant in the car. Then there were two men talking. The other guy says, "I'm not feeling okay." Then like, no, let's leave it. Then the guy stops. Then they talk about what's going on. Then the elephant leaves the room. So we must start to talk about the problems that we're facing as men. We must start to talk. We must start to talk. I have a question here. Oh, I have two questions. I hope that we still have time. So here is the first question from Stella.
Okay, so let's ask you.
As stress-related matters, suicidal. It depends on the pressure. I would say it depends on the pressure of the stress. Remember, I said there are stresses where there are everyday stresses. Those are just minor stresses. Like Maxine said, it's all, I believe, job and anxiety, like it's a normal anxiety. It is all about some other stress-related matters. Yeah, they are suicidal. It depends on the pressure. Is stress.
And I think it also largely depends on your stressing, your coping rather mechanisms as an individual. Because if you are experiencing chronic stress and you don't have the appropriate coping mechanisms, I think the likelihood of suicide or self-harming is higher than somebody who's developed healthy and very consistent, reliable rather, coping mechanisms.
Oh, okay. And the other question.
Does running away from the circumstances that one feels?
But wait. Before we answer the question, let's take a short break. Then we'll answer the last question. Then we will have closure.
Okay, no problem.
People can think that I'm sneaky, manipulative,
reckless all the time.
I have no skills or ambitions.
Can I catch it?
I think there's something really wrong with the term borderline personality disorder, because it suggests that maybe I'm a bad person or that I don't even have a personality.
I hear voices with my schizophrenia, and people think it's easy to just challenge the voices and tell yourself to ignore these voices.
This image of being in a film such as One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, that you lost control, that's also everybody's misconception of what bipolar disorder is.
The reality of my illness is that it can be really hard work.
You can have mood dips, you can have mood highs, but it can be controlled.
Every day I have to challenge myself and my voices and tell myself that I'm better than my voices.
I am very fortunate to have the support of my wife, and she stood there and stood up for me when other people wouldn't.
I have a good friend who I've known for years. He then told me he'd be there with me throughout it all.
You can have a great job. I've had an excellent career.
You have family, you can have friends.
So you can be functioning, you can live a healthy life if you have the right help.
Yeah, I guess we can now answer our last question. Last question. Yeah.
Okay. So, for this question, I just want us to note that when somebody has avoidance coping mechanisms, that doesn't necessarily mean they're running away forever. Usually, what happens with things like avoidance coping mechanisms is that you have not yet developed the correct emotional maturity to handle the stress that you're dealing with. So what avoidance coping mechanisms aim to do is basically give you time while you develop those emotional maturity and the right coping skills, so that eventually you can deal with that stressor. So running away is not a permanent thing. So sooner or later, you're going to have to deal with the stress. The only thing with avoidance coping mechanisms is that they're trying to give you time, basically. Your mind is basically saying, I'm not ready to deal with whatever is going on right now. I need time. And then you're supposed to then become ready so that you can deal with the thing. So I don't know, like, it doesn't really help because it's just a chance for you to develop, to be where you need to be to address the issue. So when all is said and done, you need to then come back to the situation and deal with it appropriately. So yeah, I don't know if that answers the question.
It certainly does. It does. I would say now I was gonna say what it's like. It's a prolonged era or space that gives you time, to deal with it, as much as you're avoiding it, but you're dealing it in your avoidance. So it gives you time, to deal with whatever it is, and then sooner or later, well, you'll have to face it at the end. Yeah.
Okay. That's very much powerful. Before we close, maybe we can have Maxine and not Paulo just to summarize if there's anything of Unugi Kuluma, then yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, let's remember those coping strategies when we have stress. Like, let's take it first as something that is serious, but not stress ukuthi ish ngilahlekelwe i-100 but ngiyazi ukuthi ngizoyithola lana endlini, that kind of stress, no, but it's stuff is serious. And yeah, I was just going to emphasize on the 3 coping and design strategies. Let's remember there's the problem solving one, where you think things through. And you think, like you are within now and you think. And then there's one is the issue avoidance strategy, Now it gives you more room and time, Not that you avoid but soon because you have to come and address the stress at the end of the day. But my thing is avoidance, it prolongs, So how long are you going to prolong this thing? Sometimes I know it's either said than done. But I feel like sometimes just deal with it and get done with it rather than we prolong. Of course, it's really the more you prolong stress, the more it becomes chronic and it adds on. So as soon as if you get to that point, and then the last one is the one is social support. So more feeling that now this is too much for me. This stress is very too much. I can't take it alone. Try people, they should get involved with support groups. Go and join that support group. They will help you. Trust me, it will be of good help. So yeah, that was my last point. Just pressing on those strategies. So if it's not problem solving, if you feel like it's not working for you to go to party and think through which one, okay, how am I going to deal with this? You can step to the other one, avoidance. If you feel like I avoidance this party and when I want to deal with this now, rush get to a social support group system. The fire search, I believe there's a lot plus online. You can search for their numbers or online, and then you'll find the one that's nearest to you. Now, hey, search for the local ones to what to attend. Maybe daily or once a week or whenever, it depends.
Okay, so what I wanted to say basically is to be like, if you are a person who finds yourself relying on avoidance mechanisms for coping, don't feel too bad about it. Just understand that you're not at a place where your mind is ready to deal with the stress that you're being faced with, but also try and learn better coping mechanisms so that you can address what needs to happen. I think for me, when I think about it, the best way to deal with stress is to have a mixture of those coping mechanisms where you have a problem solving approach as well as a social support approach, because now you're getting the support that you need from others, but you're also not just being like, okay, they'll fix the problem. You're also taking, you're being very proactive to be like, I'm ready to solve my own problems, to deal with my own stress. And also just to be like, if you are experiencing any mental health issues, during this time, I know obviously we have the pandemic, there's a lot of social distancing rules. There are professionals, therapists that are giving therapy online, and you can then connect to support groups online with those therapists. So you'll still be in the comfort of your own home. You're not risking yourself to go out and get help, but you're able to then connect with other people with similar problems online with the help of a therapist. Also, just to say that support groups are very helpful, and they are very resourceful in teaching you better ways to cope with stress and manage your mental health illnesses as well as your anxiety and stress.
Perfect.
Okay. Xoli? Yeah, I think John might be having some technical difficulties.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, he's back now. Oh,
Okay.
Yeah, no, I had some technical issues, but yeah,
okay.
we are back. We are back. I just wanted to say thank you very much for joining us. Yeah, we are informed, and hopefully tomorrow we're going to have an awesome one, awesome one, awesome one. I can't give out details, but I'll send it out in the post what we'll be talking about, and I hope that it will be fun. It will be fun. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, thank you very much for everyone who has joined us today. And yeah, may we all have an awesome one, an awesome one. Thank you very much to Maxine, Nokolo.
Thank you.
And Nokolo.